Welcome to Miscellaneous Builds. Today I'm talking about the 5 C's of LEGO, specifically in building / MOC design. Some of these tie in with each other. These are just some, I guess, the build theory behind these. So without further ado, let's get started. So I don't usually, for this kind of video, which this is also my first, but I wouldn't want to do one of my builds. The only reason I did do my build was that I just didn't get a reply back with whether they're okay using their build for the video. So I wanted to get this out sooner than later while I had time. So I just used one of my own builds as an example. And this is an example of clear, so clarity. I believe this is necessary for understanding a MOC. Oftentimes you'll see builds that you can't really tell what is going on. I think that's a big problem with a lot of builders that are budding, is that they just don't realize, like, when you're looking at it, we can't give you good feedback because there's like 100 minifigures on the 32 by 32 base plate. And that's mainly what it is about how crowded it is. It's all about the placement. For example, that big tree on the right, if I move that to the left, it would have been a little crowded with the statue. And the figures are kind of placed around, so there's space, and there's stuff going on. There's not a lot of empty space except for that front-ish middle, and even there I added some things to break up that space, or that emptiness. However, there's stuff going on, but it's not overly crowded. If I put all 3 minifigures, and one time I did, I put them all in one line, there's too much going on in that one space, and that's why I moved one minifigure to on top of the statue platform. And so that's kind of what is going on with clarity. So main point of that is to have space between things. And I also think that negative space is something you need. Like the black in this, the background is the negative space, and it creates a shape to the build. This build is about cleanness or cleanliness, or however you want to say it. And this one is Microscopic Slides by Forlorn / Morlorn Empire. This is technically posted on his Morlorn Empire Flickr page, which I'll link below, but I'll also link to the builder himself, which is Forlorn Empire. I think this was done for a article on New Elementary. And so this build is an example of clean. And I think a clean MOC is vital. It is very similar to the idea of it being crowded. And it's not just about exposed studs. Like, generally, it's pretty flat, clean. It does what it's supposed to be doing. I think that every build needs no studs. I think studs are good. It's just, if you have an entire terrain just studs and everything has studs, it gets a little messy. But there is an art. It's really intuitive in that scenario. Being able to create a build with clean angles, and just so it's obviously clear, like it's a box, 9-degree angles, everything you can see easily, and it's, once again, it's very much like the clear, but this build is just organized, etc. The next build is by Kev.the.Builder, the Polymath, and this one is just so good that I didn't even want to show you the picture first. So without further ado, look at it. Okay, I'm sorry, I had to do some sort of joke like this, and I also need to do a joke like this. So, I apologize for my stupidity. Come on, though, it's Rick Astley, so, you can't. But in all seriousness, the reason that I didn't have an image for that was because the person disabled downloading their photos on Flickr, and I didn't know their contact other than Flickr. Discord is usually the easiest way. Everyone I contacted was through Discord because that's faster than just Flickr mail. But his build was a very well done example of it, and so I just wanted to use it. So it was the Polymath by Kev.the.Builder. This is about contrast, and I'm going to be talking about color as well in the contrast section, which this build is on the color aspect of it. However, we'll get to that later. But in terms of the contrast, there are so many builds that are, I think, mainly Star Wars. They're just grays and blacks, maybe some whites. Especially in terrain, the contrast between grays, just dark gray, light gray stonework, it's not very contrasty. It all kind of melds together. And I believe that in contrast, the color is a very big point in contrast, so I'll probably be saying that a lot too. The colors in this build really help contrast everything. You can clearly make out all the details, like the windowsills, the roofs. The white statue in the middle immediately captures your attention because that's the only... I think there might be some other bits of white, but that's the main bit of white. And that just draws it to it, and then you see like the gray stonework for the ground, but that's about all the gray in the build. And then the rest is reds and tans and oranges. The only place that I do think the contrast could have been a little better was on the right, where the roof and the building kind of are meld together, at least as someone who's partially colorblind to me. But that's just something I think I could improve on the build. Other than that, overall the contrast is really good. And just using color to make it that everything you can see clearly, oh, there's the windowsill, oh, there's the door, is very important. I see this in a lot of the dark times entries as well. A lot of the people that are applying, I think I've seen 2 actually recently, where the platforms have been just tiles built into the terrain, just straight on it, and there's not a lot of contrast there. So it's also levels, angles, etc. So that's contrast. This is color. We're actually going to do this build. This is Ralsei, Prince from the Dark. And this is by Anthony Wilson. Sorry, I butchered your name right there. I sincerely believe that every build needs at least one vibrant or at least a warm color in it. I don't think every single one that doesn't have it is going to be terrible, but I think that when you add one vibrant color, it makes it better. A lot of the Star Wars builds I see, there isn't just enough color pop. It's just grays, whites, blacks, as I said earlier. Even adding bits of orange for crates, it just adds a little bit of color to the build. And this one uses like a lot of different colors. This one uses some blacks and whites, and I know white is technically a vibrant or at least a bright color. I think it's a base color like the whites, or I mean like the blacks and the grays. But then this build uses some greens and magentas to a great purpose. The dark green, light green, and the magenta. I really like the color magenta, especially against black. And then the greens and everything, they really meld well, and it makes the character pop. I see the magenta, I go right to the head and the face where it pops out. I want to point out this is from a game. I try to stay away from things that are replicating entertainment, as then it is a whole new ballpark in terms of color like this. The color of the build is based directly on the character. Like, if it's the Iron Giant and it's all gray, well, I'm not going to say, like, apply, oh, there's not enough color pop because it's based off that character. And that's why I feel like Star Wars MOCs are much harder, at least in terms of bases. I didn't realize this was one from a game, but I still think it's great nonetheless. So the last one is The Last Hour of the Clone Wars by Malen Garek. I do want to talk about background with this build. This was actually the thing that got me into more of the Discord and the Flickers, was the Dark Times RPG. This build was the one that got me into that. And I think that was just, it has helped me through those Discord servers, and having a bigger thing on Flickr has helped me at least improve at a builder. There's a lot of nice builders on these places that gave me improvement. So this is about complexity. So when I say complex, I don't mean techniques. To be honest, I feel like the excessive, like, oh, a great build needs some good techniques, I think that's a little overused, although it does help. But when I say complex, I mean the angles of a build. So a lot of the tier 3 builds. So tier 5 is like a little kid's build. Tier 3 is like the decent builds, and then tier 1 being like the favorite all-time builders that you're seeing all the time, like Jonas Cran, Simon Liu, some of the bigger names. So a lot of the tier 3 builds can often achieve tier 2 simply by adding some interesting angles. So many tier 3 builds remain inside the rectangular box of most bricks. And by box, like, I mean 90-degree angles, like most Lego bricks are, and there's some hinge plates and stuff. But generally, they stay in that they keep in with the angles the bricks allow, or at least in legal techniques. But in this build, I think that not only is the platform angled, but it's also inset into the ground, which adds even more angles in a way. You can't see my air quotations that I'm making with my fingers, because the build is now even more 3D, because you see that the platform is tilted, which that's, I think, my favorite part about this build. And then you have it inset into the ground, so you can actually see that in the corner of the thing, that there's pieces that are going into the ground, and you can imagine that the platform is sinking in. And that's what I really like about this build, and that complex angles are just adding a new layer of just wow to the build. Whenever I see a build that's decent, but also it's like the idea is there, but it's just a little bit bland, I like to say just add some angles. And I feel like angles really just add a new level of complexity to a build. And they're not hard to add, but you take a brick that's generally 90-degree angles and you've added a new angle to it. And that's really what I think is amazing about some of the biggest builds I see, is I just love a build with angles. So there you have it. That was my top 5 C's of MOC design. I hope you enjoyed this video. I know it was a little... I personally don't feel great about this video, but I'm hoping to get better as content and maybe make some more of this kind of content. If there's anything you want to see, comment below and let me know if there's anything, other videos you'd like to see by me on this kind of topic. So, in the meantime, keep on building.